Hello, good afternoon, good evening, welcome. Welcome to another live stream here in Animation Land. As you can see, anybody who's joined me in the past can see that I've just changed things up a little bit for today. I've actually got a friend over here joining me, dancing along, and then I've also heard that there's a forecast of snow. Wah, wah, wah. That's the best I could do for now. So I got a little bit of snow today in Southern California. We've certainly got a lot of wind tonight in Southern California, but yeah, I got a little bit of snow here. Watch this space. We'll see if we can get some more better snow going on, but that's the best I could do for today. My name is Scott Claus. Yes, this guy, Scott Claus, S. Claus to my friend, and my working professional name. And what you're looking at over here is an example of some 2D animation. It's actually about the cheapest, fastest 2D animation I could come up with. It's actually not new. I did this a while back and did it in about an hour. Back in the olden days of 2016 or thereabouts, I was trying to do something to show somebody how you could do a limited animation with using Flash, which quickly became Animate CC, and is now called Animate CC, but the rules are still the same. It was vector-based animation for years. This was the way that things were done online and things were done in TV, and now we can do a lot more. And so it's pretty cheap and simple animation. One of these days I'll get around to fixing it up and making it a little more complex, but I really just wanted a quick little loop that had Santa dancing. So let me get rid of the... Oh. Anyway, so tonight I'm going to be talking about 2D animation. If anybody's ever joined me before, they know the drill, which is as I will talk and draw, and please feel free to bounce in at any time with any topics of conversation. Yeah. If you're talking about the animation, yeah, it's definitely going slow. If you're talking about how it's rendering for everybody out in Streamland, yeah, let me fix that up. It's probably just going too slow because I've got too much junk going on. Anyway, thank you, Tama, for pointing that out. Let me see if I can fix it up. But trust me, the animation doesn't look that much better going at speed. But yeah, thank you. Thanks. Let me see if I can figure out what's going on. Yeah. Fixing it. Yeah, it's just because I had this really heavy snow effect going on. So yeah, well, we won't do snow this week. Let me see if I can show you the Santa though, and see if that's working. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. And so anyway, yeah, so we're going to be talking about 2D animation today, and if all goes according to plan, I will be drawing some stuff, a scene that I've been working on. And like I said, please feel free to ask questions, and I will do my best to answer or point you in the right direction. Yeah, so there you go. Now you can see Santa. Like I said, it's not moving a lot more smoothly now than it was before. It was done in Flash. It was done very quickly. It was done, I think, with 6 or 7 drawings. Again, I was just trying to prove that you can do something really fast and down and dirty and just have fun with it. It is what it is. But anyway, I just wanted to have a little friend up there. And yeah, we'll leave the snow out of it for now. Anyway, so yeah, please feel free to ask questions, chat amongst yourselves. I will continue to talk about what I usually talk about in these streams, which is the animation business in general. A lot of people want to know, how do I get into the business? What do I find when I get there? What should I do to apply, portfolio, that sort of thing. My history is that I worked in 2D animation for several years. I worked at Disney and DreamWorks and other related production houses that were doing feature films. You can check out my story on imdb.com. That will tell you, some of the movies I worked on. I talk about them a lot, so you can ask me questions about the films. If there's something I can answer, I'd be more than happy to. And other than that, the floor is yours if you want to talk about stuff. Please feel free to chime in at any time, and obviously keep it civil, keep it clean, there are kids watching. And tonight I'm going to be working on a scene I started a long time ago. I finished off the hero character on it. I'll just show that again. No reason not to. I finished off the hero character and I'm working on the monster. So I'm going to go ahead now and turn Santa off and jump into work mode. And you can see my scene, and then I'll start addressing any questions or any thoughts and showing you what I'm going to be working on tonight. So I'm working on the monster tonight. I've already done the hero character and colored it and taken it all the way. And there's a background too. Pull that one up. And so I'll just let you guys look at that for a little while I'm talking. So anyway, good evening, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are. Thank you, Tama, for your help in letting me know that it wasn't playing at speed. I appreciate that. If there's ever any problems with the sound or the picture or anything, I love it when you guys chime in. I can't always tell on my end when I'm drawing away. So thank you for that. Sometimes I can be blocking the work by putting my face too close, or I'm not talking loud enough, whatever. So yeah, thanks for sharing. And now I've got a question from Who's Bounty. You know that it's off topic. You inquired about a class a month ago and didn't hear back. Should you apply again or just wait? Did you apply or did you inquire? Those are two different things. If you applied, hi Abby, Abby freaks. If you applied for a class to be taken at CG Spectrum and they never got back to you, that's different than if you simply asked a question. However, in either case, you should have gotten a response. So please feel free to chime in again and ask and say, hey, I never heard back from you. Can you please answer this question? They're always standing by waiting to answer questions, waiting to get people signed up for the classes, as well as freebie classes that they offer sometimes. So if you're interested in maybe getting a sampler of one of our classes, then you can inquire about that as well on the website. So it's cgspectrum.com, cgspectrum.com here, CGS. Now listen to this. Yes, you can see it on my screen, cgspectrum.com. So, but just in case you can't, and then that will hopefully answer any questions you might have by talking to the people in charge there. So anyway, yeah, it's a good question. Don't know what happened. Don't know why they didn't get back to you, but I don't have a personal line to that. But please inquire again. I'm sure they would be happy to hear from you and would be delighted to answer any questions you might have. So yeah, go ahead and check in with that. All right, so anyway, as you can see, so I've got this scene going. Like I said, the hero character with the dagger, that one's pretty much done. I might make some more tweaks to it at some point, but for all intents and purposes, it's done. And so I've been focusing on the monster lately, and I already roughed it out, so I'll show you that. And then I'll get into it. What I'm mostly doing at this point is I'm cleaning the thing up. So I'll be doing kind of a final line. I want to get this thing knocked out, but I'll show you how I put it together and show you what the kind of what the train of events have been for the scene so far, and then start working on it and get into making it look even better, hopefully. Anyway, so the way it started out was, I'll just get rid of the hero character right now. So the thing is done. I'm going to get rid of the background, and then I'll just show you how it looks when it's in rough form. So I didn't do a lot of drawings with this one because I wanted to keep it real loose, and it's moving fast, and it's real bouncy, and I can, you know, sometimes I think it's important when you're animating to just play and just have some fun. Some people will tell you that animation's all play and it's all fun. Yeah, but sometimes you're putting a little more work into something and trying to make it look really sweet. And other times you just want to just practice and play your trade. And it's like, how did things move? And what are some of the issues that come up? And while you're trying to keep the 12 principles in mind, you know, volume, timing, spacing, good design, silhouette value, all those things. And I think it's really important just to mess around and have fun playing with shapes and volumes and just seeing what you can come up with. So sometimes it's good to really focus and say, use reference and be very specific about what you're doing and keep everything very tight and controlled. And other times you should just play and just see what comes as a result of it. So that's how this scene came to pass. I didn't really plan it out too much. I spent a lot more time on the human character than I did on the monster. The human character I used reference and put a lot of thought into things like the exaggeration. So I've talked about this a lot before, so I won't go into it too much, but you can see like exaggerating the arm, putting a lot of thought into the arcs. I've had people complain, they're like, well, wait a minute, his pole, the staff, whatever it is he's holding, it totally goes through his body. It's like, I'm from a different generation where we could just get away with stuff like that in 2D. Yeah, there's a way of doing it. And I might even fix it if enough people have mentioned it. It's like, oh, well, fine. I'll just make sure that the staff always stays behind his back. It really doesn't matter. When it's playing at speed and he's dark and it's black, you don't really see it. But, we live in a more literal world now than the world I grew up in. And it's like, oh, yeah, I can see, okay, yeah, sure, I can fix that. It won't take too long. But really, it's like, no, I didn't care. It's like, yeah, it's just a cartoon action that moves really quickly. But anyways, I put a lot more thought into that. I use reference. I put a lot of time and energy into making sure that it worked as nicely as I could, given the fact that I really just was doing this as a fun one-off. And so if I was really serious about it, I would have spent a lot more time on it. But just as a fun something to do for the stream, that's where I left it. The character was finished. So I'll turn him off and continue on with this. Well, hello, Jordan. Welcome. I got to share this with Jordan so you can see that I've got Santa here today. It's just this dopey little flash thing, but I aim to please, so I don't want anybody to miss that I brought Santa with. I'm going to bring Santa with me every week now. I don't know, maybe I'll improve Santa as we go. I'll show like the differences between where I started. Probably I won't, but I'm happy with it as it is. Again, it is what it is. It's just this silly little kind of gift looking thing. Anyway, so that's anybody who just showed up, that's Santa, or anybody who just said hello, Santa for you. All right, so now looking at the monster. Thanks, Jordan. Now looking at the monster, so you can see all these red ticks and blue ticks in my timeline. Well, those represent keys and breakdowns, and then things that don't have red ticks or blue ticks, those are just in-betweens. And you can see maybe that some of my drawings have a little more detail, some of them have a little less detail, especially when you get towards the end here, there's not much detail at all. And like I said, I just really roughed this out and really just played around with the volumes and the shapes. I did the tentacles on 2 separate layers so that I could just concentrate on the tentacles as one individual element that's not moving really in tandem with the body of the creature. And then I did the body of the creature separately from the tentacles, like so. And part of the cleanup process will be melding the 2 of those so that it looks like the character's body is connected to the tentacles as I go through and clean it up a little bit. So anyway, so I'm going to just dive in here now and start playing around. I think I'll probably start with the end of the scene. It might be a little bit easier to do that while I'm yammering away. I'm going to add an empty drawing, turn on the onion skin, and just start, just go for it. See how much I can do tonight while I'm talking. So I've got a question from Abby. Hey, Abby. So would you say human characters require more control and precision than monsters and more exaggeration based with better with flowing types? Yeah, so I mean, that's exactly what I did the scene for. So I'm glad you mentioned that, is I wanted to just show the difference between some of the different challenges you come up with when you're doing different types of characters. I wanted the human character to look much more controlled and much more realistic. And it's still not very realistic. It's still very cartoony. I didn't really go into this time because it's not the point, but I was basing that character on the style that Don Bluth had come up with for Space Ace and Dragon's Lair, the video games that they had in the 80s that I was a huge fan of. So that's the kind of what I was trying to emulate without actually just copying it. I was trying to get there's a certain rhythm that stuff has, that animation has. I'll play it again just for fun, so you can, while I'm talking about it. But if you watch this character, there's a kind of exaggerated rhythm that the character has that's based on the Don Bluth thing. And even the design is kind of based on Don Bluth. Not really, but it's sort of Space Ace-like or Dexter-like. It's based on a bunch of stuff, Bollywood, my own individual style, and I don't know, a couple other things. Peter Pan, but the Disney thing, but or Disney film, but yeah, it's a lot harder. And again, I would go back and I'd fix this up a lot. There's a lot of issues with it that are a lot of things that I would do differently now. But I thought it was good enough. It's a cartoon. It's, you know, it is what it is. It wasn't meant to be realistic, subtle acting 2D animation. It was just an action scene. So I wanted to do it for the stream and not for personal use or anything. So yeah, so with the human, I mean, you can see that I, exaggerated some frames here and there. Let's see, there's another one here where you can see lots of exaggeration, extension of arms and legs and things happening. And I put a lot of thought into that. I didn't put that much thought into it because, again, this is a really quick down and dirty thing that I did here. But just exaggerating the hands and exaggerating the arcs and really over the top, doing a lot of over the top stuff with everything, but still trying to make it look like a human character. And some things got away from me, some volumes and things, but I don't know. I'm not going to knock my own stuff. I'll let you guys knock my work if you want, but please don't. But anyway, yeah, human characters are much harder. And so when we were working on, say, for example, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and they wanted everything to be really realistic, it was quite a challenge. It was an unprecedented challenge because it wasn't cartoony, and yet it also wasn't rotoscope where you just trace everything, where you just copy live action and then try to turn it into animation. It was realistic live action style animation, but it also was animation first and foremost. And I think it works pretty well, all things considered. I think Hunchback is one of the state-of-the-art 90s, what do they call it, Renaissance era Disney animated films. And I was really glad to be a part of it, but it was tough. And we all just, when we saw the character designs, we all just groaned and said, can't we do just like little cats and dogs? Or, it's like some of the past Disney animated films, something a little bit less challenging, but no, they were determined to do something. Another one was that I worked on was Prince of Egypt, and I was on Moses, not as an animator, but as a cleanup person. But it was still tough to do humanoid characters and to keep their faces on model and make sure that they looked animated, but that they also looked very realistic at the same time. It's one of the toughest things to do. Well, thanks, Jordan, and thank you, Abby. So yeah, you're always looking for, as an animator, you're looking for something that gives you an opportunity to concentrate on flowing shapes, and that gives you the freedom to just take off and be crazy. And something interesting that's happened in the last, 20 years or maybe more, is that a lot of mainstream animation, and I'm talking like TV shows specifically, but series and things, has gotten uber realistic or tight, I guess is the best word for it. Think about it this way. Think about like South Park. And if you've ever seen the original short, I don't remember what it was, a Christmas thing that they did, a short, and they used paper cutouts, and compare that to how it looks now. And it looks so slick now and so clean. And when it first started, it was kind of rough. And that's just sort of changing tastes over time, where we live in a world of digital art, and there's not a lot of room for the roughness that was really popular when I was growing up. And I don't know, I'm hearing more and more students are saying, I really like the rough stuff. I really like that rough, jaggedy edge pencil line. And I'm not, I've seen the real clean look, and I know that digital animation, we can do anything we want. And now I'm kind of more interested in this really rough looking organic style. So, I mean, I think it's great. I like all styles. So I have my favorites, but I certainly like motion graphics. I say this all the time, but I really like motion graphics. I like everything. And I'm always excited when somebody kind of comes up with a new way of communicating using frame by frame motion graphics. So digital, analog, whatever. But yeah, getting away from the cleaner look and getting into a more kind of rough and ragged look it's quite fun. So South Park used to be quite gravelly, and that's great. That's a great expression. So, yeah, I agree. And you know, and The Simpsons too. There's everybody laughs about the Simpsons, how they first looked when they first appeared. I remember I was there. Well, I mean, a lot of us were there, but I remember when they appeared on the Tracy Ullman show, and we were all just like, huh, that's a pretty crazy little cartoon. It was very odd. I grew up in Oregon, and so I grew up with Matt Groening with his cartoons. They were prominently featured in underground newspapers at the time, and so I knew his style, and I knew kind of who he was, and he was sort of legendary in my world of the late 80s. And so I wasn't surprised to see a cartoon in his style, and it was very much his style. It was very strange and irreverent, and not really the sort of mainstream cynical stuff that it is today. It was a little bit more out there, and it was more rough and more raw, and then it got progressively more and more slick. And so yeah, it's interesting, just phases that we go through as things get more slick, and then they get more rough, and then more slick, and then more rough. So Ed and Eddie definitely looked rough or scribbly. What a good look. Yeah, that's true, Jordan. That's a great example. Ed and Eddie was a cool one for a little bit more rough look. And it's nowadays you can have any look that you want. I guess that's the point. Is used to be you were hampered by the technology of the time, and that's why things would look the way they did. So people say to me, "Oh, I really like Robin Hood or Aristocats or Jungle Book because it has this scratchy line quality." Well, it's the best they could do because they were Xeroxing original animation drawings and then cleaning them up and trying to retain as much of the original as possible. And that's where you get that scratchy look that a lot of people find very attractive. I find it attractive because I grew up with it, but I like everything. I don't play favorites. I just like everything. I don't discriminate too much. So, but I'm curious if anybody likes any of those particular styles. And a lot of my animation references are older. They're based in my generation, and so I also like hearing about the stuff that you guys like and what you're into these days. And if I don't know some of them, I like hearing about them because then I can go check them out too. And that's something that's I don't know. I think it's important to evolve and keep evolving. And it's great to like what you like and concentrate on that. But at a certain point, particularly if you want to be in the industry of animation, you got to have your finger on the pulse of what's happening out there and what people are into, and know that nothing ever stays the same, and that's cool. And it's nothing to be scared of. As long as you're excited about animation, you'll always keep up with whatever's going on. So I'm doing a really broad in between here. I'm basing it on the original key I had. And again, one of the reasons that I did this is so I could just be really loose. And it's not going to matter too much if I do tight in betweens on this thing, at least when it's moving around a lot. And it's pretty sloppy too. I'm not being real precious about volumes or line quality. You'll see, hopefully, if I finish this thing within the next week or so, you'll see that it didn't matter that I had this perfect concise line for a lot of this stuff. This is what I always say about projects. Maybe you can verify this if you've ever tried to make a project of your own, that projects have a shelf life, and there comes a point where you just get sort of weary of working on the same project. You want to start a new one. We call it, it's terrible, but some people call it adultery, when you're actually not focusing on your project that you started and you're starting another one. And it's important not to commit adultery when you're working on a project. So anyway, good conversation going here. What's this on YouTube? But confused. What's on YouTube? Yeah, so we're on several platforms. To the best of my knowledge, we're on YouTube, Twitch, Periscope, Facebook, and one other. I think that's it, actually. Yeah, so Facebook, Periscope, Twitch, and YouTube, and one other. Yeah. Thank you, Grayscale J. I appreciate it. But yeah, so and at any time, if you guys are, like I said, if you are finding that something's gone weird with the stream or something like that, just give us a holler and I'll see if I can fix it. I appreciate it when you guys do that. So, but one thing that I just want to stress before I kind of let that topic go was it's important that you finish things. So just anybody out there who's working on projects, it is important that you finish what you start. Finishing something, even if it's not that good, is better than not finishing something at all. And I can't stress that enough, because I used to be the type of person who would just kind of abandon one project after another. And it's just something that I learned through trial and error, is that it's really important to finish what you start before moving on to the next thing, because you just learn so much. And when you always are continually starting something new, what sometimes happens is you have this collection of things that are all going to be so cool one day, but you never quite get around to proving that they're cool. And then you get in the habit of just abandoning projects, and then you've got this whole pile of projects that were almost, but never quite finished. And the secret to finishing is that once you've done it once, it just gets easier and easier. If you can finish one thing, then you can finish something else. And I've done lots of big projects on my own. When you're working for a company, it's easier to finish something because you've got a deadline and you've got a boss and you've got people telling you constantly that you have to do this and do that. And when you're working on your own, it's easier to get distracted. But I think probably part of one of the reasons that I got better at finishing things was because I was working, and that helps you to get in the mode of, okay, I'm going to do what I can for today, and then once the bell rings, so to speak, the figurative bell rings, and you're free to go home and get back to whatever you like to do with your time. You just kind of forget about work and then move on. Well, teaching yourself to do that in your own work is probably an important thing to consider. Can I become one of these people who works at home? I mean, we're all at home, or most of us, or we're supposed to be, I think. I don't know, I've lost track. But, we're all capable of working from home if we want to. But it may require being disciplined and going, all right, I work from this hour to this hour, then I take a break, and then I go do something else, and move on and do other things with my time after I've had a work day, or the equivalent of a work day. And again, once you've done it, once you've tried that and you succeeded, you'll do it again. And so it's important that you just, even if you're going to fail at something, that you just try it, do it, take it to completion, learn what you need to learn from the project or whatever it is you're attempting, and then move on and on to the next one. there's a misnomer out there that you're going to create like this perfect project right from the start. And it's important to know that you won't finish your perfect project until you've done a lot of really rotten ones first. And it's important to always think that this next project is going to be your best thing you ever did, and give it all the enthusiasm in the world. But just understand that it takes a lot of failures, a lot of unsuccess before you get to the success that you probably are interested in having. So, animations, what I love doing in free time aside from drawing and painting. Well, if you like to draw and paint, 2D animation is probably a good fun thing to do, because it's helpful to be an artist who loves to draw and paint. If you're wanting to be an animator, it's a good start. And Jordan, don't finish your animation. Well, I mean, there's a first time for everything. So a new year's coming up. You can resolve to be that type of person who finishes your work. So, and Abby says he's heard animation is a hobby and job can get too much. Yeah, it's a good point. I was in the animation industry as an artist, drawing all day, every day for, I don't know, 10 years? Nah, not even that long. No, it was 10 years. From 1989 to 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. Yeah, 2003. So from let's say 1991, no, 1990 to 2003 was the time when I was drawing every day, all day for a living, and often on weekends. And what I found was I just stopped being interested in drawing. I didn't draw as much. And my drawing got really good, but when I would draw things, I would be better than I ever was in my whole life. And I look back at those drawings now, and that's just the best era of my work ever. But I really got fried out from drawing all the time and for a living. And so it wasn't until I got into CG animation that I started drawing again, and then kind of got it back. But yeah, it's something to think about. It's like, do you want to make your favorite thing in the world to do as a hobby? Do you want to make that your job and something that you do all day, and then kind of get to a point where you're really sick of it? It's just something to think about. It's an alternate thing that could happen. There are some people I know who just love drawing so much. It's like I always said about working in a pizza restaurant. It's like, I wonder if I would ever have gotten tired of pizza if I worked in a pizza restaurant. I don't think I would have, but you never know until you get there. So some people I know never ever get sick of animation and would just go and do it forever. And those people were definitely destined to be animators from the start. So, but it is a thing. It's a risk that you run when you do what you love to do with your spare time as a job. The other side of the coin, obviously, is that when you do what you love for a job, you're doing what you love all day and you're getting paid for it. Ooh. So, but it's something to think about. I did not like to draw after a while. I just got sick of it because I did it all day. But when I did draw, my work was really, really special. It was really nice as a result of having been exposed to all the beautiful art at Disney and DreamWorks by the incredible artists who toiled there, some of which are still there, a lot of which are not there, but they are mostly doing CG animation now, but they still do pre-production artwork. So a lot of I knew some famous background painters and character designers and people who did the maquettes for the shows. And they were artists first and foremost, and they loved what they did, and they did what they loved, and they got paid for it, and they got paid pretty well too. So that isn't a bad thing. So I think there'll be some AI tech in the next 5 years, increase productivity at an insane rate. Yeah, I mean, I think that there already are things like that out there, and more and more come every day. And I have mixed feelings about some of them. I always talk about the time when ink and paint as an art form and as a requirement of 2D animated films was obliterated in favor of digital ink and paint, which is still used today, which I use it when I'm coloring my own stuff. And the sad truth is that as much as I felt for my ink and paint friends who just couldn't cross over to the digital world, and who rightly so said the art of it began to go away when there was no more painting. But you look at something like The Lion King, which was one of the first major, maybe the first major ink and paint film. Rescuers Down Under came first, but was not. I don't consider that a major Disney release. A lot of people have forgotten about it already. But Lion King, people still remember that one from the original, not the digital remake. And it was colored digitally, ink and paint lines and ink and paint colors. And it just looks phenomenal, and you can't argue with it. And it just freed them up to be able to do more with compositing and with replicating animations so that they could reuse it and just on a budget. And just that movie just still looks really incredible, in my humble opinion. And it came about because of the digital aspects of it. So are you going to stop progress and say, don't ever do that? I just wish that things didn't have to go away as a result of other things coming along. But as they say in the Army, go tell it to the chaplain. Time marches on, and you either march with it or you get stomped on, and you get left behind. But I know people who select to paint cells. I still paint cells. Well, I haven't for a long time, but I used to paint cells as recently as 2013. I was making some and selling them when I was between jobs, just for laughs, just for fun, to see if anybody would be interested. And I sold them, and I had a patron, and I was making handmade animation cells, just like the old school way, and selling them, not copyrighted stuff, just my own artwork that made it look like it was from an old school 2D animated film. People liked it. So, yeah, so if something does come along, some way to interpolate drawings, I mean, you already can, and there are ways to do it. It's just not foolproof. But I mean, even Maya isn't foolproof. I worked in that for years, and Maya, any animator worth their salt in CG animation, in my humble opinion, does not rely on the in-betweens that you get from the curve editor from Maya solely. It's like you go in there and you fuss with it and you make it look exactly the way you want to, and you don't leave things to chance. You don't just let Maya in between things. So even if they came up with something that would interpolate drawings for us in the 2D world, which was what we were always intrigued about when computers were coming on the scene. It's like, could they create a computer that would actually replace us as people who did cleanup? And they didn't, in my humble opinion. They tried a whole bunch of different ways, and they looked really awful. And I haven't seen anybody do it since, but that doesn't mean they can't do it, and it doesn't mean they shouldn't. So if it's a tool that helps people, well then great. If that's going to make life easier, it's still going to require an artist, I guess, is the bottom line. So if you're an artist and you're talented and you love your work, there's probably always going to be room for that, despite what, now it gets sounds snarky, but despite what some executives would like, which is that the movies could just, you push a button and you don't have to employ people to make these films. They just kind of make themselves, and then you reap the profits. Problem is that if everybody could make a movie, then what do we need the executives for? So maybe someday they'll find out. Executives, I say that as a big kind of profiling thing. It's not that. It's just people, and just people trying to get through the day and doing their jobs. And you can really get snarky about stuff without doing anything profitable with your time or energy, worrying about the executives that are ruining movies or whatever. Anyways, enough of that. So let's see. So just want to see what you guys are chatting about. Increased productivity. So let's see it as a keep passionate, thinking new things to make animation exciting. Yeah, so Abby, keeping animation exciting is essential. I can kind of go on and on about that, but it's one of the reasons why I think the 90s renaissance for 2D animation did come to an end, is because we'd seen it all, we'd done it all, and people wanted something new and exciting, and so they flocked to things like CG animation, and even anime had a hand in ending the revolution that happened in the 90s with that started with like Little Mermaid and continued all the way on up until the last two I remember, which were Sinbad and Home on the Range, the Disney films. And my personal feeling was just that we'd kind of done it to death and people wanted something new and fresh. And there's so many different things you can do with animation. Why just have it be one thing? And again, I say this all the time, but all Hollywood cares about is making a profit. And so if you guys like something, you need to support it. And if there's support for it, then Hollywood will make more of it. And it's as simple as that. So something to think about. Yeah, so if you could do organic in-betweens that look like they're hand-drawn, that would be a pretty incredible coup. It's possible. Everything's possible. If you can think of it, it's possible. Somebody will come up with it someday. But that was the problem when we were in the 90s, and they were trying to figure out a way to replace us all so that they could just have the movies make themselves, and it didn't work out that way ever. Well, could we have a computer that would do in-betweens for us? And they just couldn't. And I don't know how you guys feel, but whenever I see vector-based animation where the computer has interpolated things, it kind of looks a little robotic and too smooth for me. I get that it's a style and I like it. Like I said, we've had that style now for a really long time, so TV shows. But now I'm starting to hear people saying, ooh, but I really like this rough, organic, scratchy look. And, that might be because it's the same thing that happened with, what was it, The Force Awakens, the Star Wars film, where they said, oh, we're going to go back and do practical effects and not rely so heavily on digital effects because it's too cold and impersonal. We want to get back to the look of the more practical stuff that they had in the 70s and 80s. And so I think that that's happening with the animation too, or it could conceivably happen where we're like, it's great that we've got this really slick digital look, but what about this real organic kind of rough feel that animated films used to have, and they maybe got away from when things all went hyper digital. So it's just something to think about. So yeah, and like Abby, like you're saying, there's a human touch that makes you attached to art. Yeah, that's the way I feel. But I also, as you say, I'm not one to judge either. I worked in CG animation for many years, and one of the reasons why I think the things that I worked on were successful was because of the human touch. I always tell a story about working on the Hulk, and they wanted us to use motion capture to prove that it worked. And in the end, we spent a lot of time keyframing stuff, which means going in there and doing it by hand. And they were going to try and sell the idea that the Hulk was all done with motion capture. It's like, oh, this is going to be the first film or something. And so it was real important to them that word got out that, oh, this was motion capture, and we did it all that way. And we were all going, no, we didn't do it that way. And the reason it looks as good as it does is because a bunch of animators sweated and toiled on that one. I was there the night that Golden Compass won the Oscar, I believe. I was working on the Hulk on a Sunday night. And I'm here to tell you that, yeah, we did that thing by hand, even if it was enhanced by motion capture, which is, somebody putting on a suit and jumping around. The stuff that you like, if you like that sort of thing, usually comes from an artist's brain and is not just generated and then forgotten about. And the same with the Tiger and Richard Richard Parker, the tiger from Life of Pi, which is probably my last big claim to fame, being a supervisor on that show. The director, Ang Lee, he'd gotten all this footage of the tiger and probably had everything that he needed to put a film together and make it look like the tiger was really there with the kid in the boat. But he got money for using a specific studio location. They kind of gave him carte blanche to do what he wanted. And he said, well, if we got the money, why don't we try to replicate the tiger in CG form and make it look really realistic? And spend a lot of time and money and energy to make it look realistic. And you can't put sensors on a tiger's body. So we had all the reference footage of the tiger, and then we'd match it, and then we'd go off of that and make it into animation, which is what you do with reference, just for the record, is you use reference as a starting point, but you don't, that is an animation. Animation is making choices based on the 12 principles and saying, oh, let's increase the arc here. Let's increase some exaggeration. Let's get a better silhouette than was there in the real world. And that's exactly what we did with the CG animation creatures that we did at Rhythm and Hues, and which garnered 2 Oscars actually, for Golden Compass and for Life of Pi, at least when I was there. But I'm here to tell you, I've got the back pains to prove it, and the hours and hours and hours we spent making it look just right and doing it in an organic way, making it look like it was real. So, no. As of now, AI generator doesn't look natural, but it's coming close. Yeah, I agree. It is coming close, and it's getting very hard to tell when things are simulations and when they're real, whatever that means. It's like anything like engineering. It's all software. So artists later on, the difference know-how. Yeah, and then think about it too for anybody who's interested in getting into the business. That somebody has to come up with the ideas, and somebody has to be able to communicate those ideas. And so artists will always have a home. It's unfortunate that artists will also probably always be exploited, and people always want you to do something for nothing, and will always insinuate that it's like, oh, well, can you just do that? I mean, you like doing it anyway. You're just having fun. So, we don't really need to pay you to do that, do we? Can't you just do it because you love it? And sometimes as artists, we tend to be rather introverted and rather, I don't know, sensitive, for want of a better word, but in tune with stuff. And it's been a constant dance ever since art began, between artists and the people who will pay for art, and trying to find a happy medium between the two of them. And yeah, each individual has to kind of face their individual situations in their own way. It's just part of the world. I'm going to send some of these drawings to X sheet. Let's see. Said that. I'm going to jump first to a more creative field, but I'm also scared to do so. You're also 27. It's a tough decision. I know 27 is a funny age. You're sort of like, well, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm not an adult. Well, maybe you think you're an adult, but in the eyes of some of us, 27, you're still technically very young and still have a lot of potential. So you're not, let's put it this way, you're not the master of your field yet necessarily. You're also not the novice. Yeah, 27 is a funny time. I will say this, you can get branded in your field, and sometimes it's a good idea to be very specific about what you want and make sure you're heading in the right direction by a certain age, because after that, then they see you as one thing, and it gets harder and harder to jump ship and do something else for a living. So here's for 27. It's a great age, by the way. It's an awesome age to be, more so every day as people are getting older. Riz One Animation says, what are you using? If you're asking about what I'm using currently on screen, it's Toon Boom. And that's one of the things that we teach at CG Spectrum, and we use it for the 2D classes, which I'm representing tonight. And so yeah, if you work with us in our classes, then we teach you how to use Toon Boom. You get a copy of it, at least to use while you're taking the classes. And then you're free to do as you will. And people will always say, well, is that the industry standard? What's the advantage? What's the disadvantage? You got to start somewhere. And we thought we've got people who are at least 3 people who are Toon Boom experts on the staff, on the team of mentors at CG Spectrum, one who's certified. And so, we can give you a real good run for your money as far as Toon Boom goes. And my feeling about it is once you've learned one of these programs, you can learn more. You'll just need to start with one of them, and then eventually you can pick up other ones. They don't change that much. One of the things that I like about this program is, I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I haven't really explained it, but I'm tracing and placing. So I can take these drawings and take them off the pegs, which are these holes and squares down here at the bottom that replicate animation paper. See, there's a black circle and then 2 squares. The triangles at the end just represent the edges of the paper, I guess. So I'm taking my drawings off the pegs, and then I'm lining them up with other drawings so that when I go in and do an in-between, I can make sure that everything is nice and lined up, that I'm keeping my volumes consistent. So you'll see what I'm doing here is now I'm going to kind of rotate this and place it so that it looks like it's in between. So I'm rotating a little bit and then lining it up. And then when I'm done with it, I go back to the camera view. You can see that I didn't do anything. It's all lined up perfect. Everything's all set up just the way it was. I haven't changed anything. It's only in the drawing view that I've got them all lined up, so I can go in here and do things like fix up the eyebrows and make sure that they're really nice and tight and clean, or as clean as I feel like getting them today. And that's one of the reasons that we decided to focus on Toon Boom as a 2D medium for hand-drawn animation for the classes that we teach here at CG Spectrum. And if you take classes from us, then we instruct you on how to do at least the stuff that you need to know to be able to create your own animation. And I say it singularly. There are some people who say animations, and I don't get it. I mean, say whatever you want. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But yes, I speak in terms of animation as a thing that happens and not as a singular thing that happens. It's come up recently, and I don't get it. But I also don't care. So call it whatever you like. Just keep doing it. That's all I ask. Keep showing us. Keep practicing animation, having fun with it. So Abby, this is great. Yeah, I agree. Jumping careers. It's I always say that the universe finds a way and will help you out if you make an effort. I'm not terribly spiritual. If you are, that's cool. It's none of my business. That's not the point. The point is I just feel like when you really want something bad enough, you'll find a way to get it. And the scarier path is almost always the right path. It's always led me to open doors. So every time I've been in a situation where I was terrified or where I actually was facing losing something, for example, I've been laid off, I don't know, twice I was laid off and I lost my entire career. And in each case, I ended up doing something even better as a result after that. So you mustn't be scared, especially if you're 27. You mustn't be afraid of changing, and you should embrace changes and just say, you know what, world, bring it on, because it'll probably be exciting and fun once you get past the scary part of it. Another thing I always tell people is you know, when you're in the middle of something that doesn't seem quite nice. So, for example, some people might think that what's going on in the world right now, for whatever reason, isn't very nice. A lot of things that aren't very nice, particularly tragic things. But it's not going to last forever. For those of us, you know, who get through all these things, it's not going to last forever. And having gotten to the other side of it, you'll look back and it may be the most memorable time you had. You'll be like, wow, that was a time that really tested my willpower. But what you can do is you can kind of project yourself into the future and imagine that one day this will be over, whatever it is that's bothering you. For a lot of my students, I'm just talking about unemployment. I'm not talking about major life catastrophes or anything. That's a little bit more out of the realm of what I'm talking about. But, you know, like, okay, I'm worried. I'm living with my parents and I'm afraid I'm not going to get a job, or I'm living on my own and things aren't happening. And I'm afraid, you know, that I'm just getting started and I don't really, and it's just scary. It's like, well, imagine in a year or so, you're probably going to be in a better place, and you may find that everything that you were afraid of has been taken care of. And if you can think about it now, you can think, well, all right, I'll just imagine myself in that place. It's very windy here today. I'll just imagine myself in that place. And now I'm not really as nervous as I was before. So just something to think about. If you are, in fact, nervous and kind of in an anxious place right now. Anyway, it's always helped me to just think, well, one day I won't be in that situation anymore. And I can look back on this and go, yeah, if I'd have known what was coming, I don't think I would have worried as much. So anyway, that's one of my philosophies. So going to go to auto design. That's cool, Jordan. I didn't know that. Actually, I think I did know that. It is tricky trying to decide between what you can make money at and then what you're doing for fun. And sometimes you do have to go with paying the rent. It's just one of the hard facts of life. When I was first in Los Angeles, I was looking for a job in editing because I had been told by somebody that there were no jobs in animation, and I believed them foolishly. And so anyway, I was running out of cash because I couldn't get a job in editing, even though I had a friend helping. And I just decided to go to a department store and I applied for a job. And I was going to be selling sheets. I was trained for 2 days on how to sell sheets. And then on the second day, which was a Friday, I got a call from my contact who was helping me get a job. And he said, well, you got it. You're hired. And I was able to transfer into the world of editing, which led me to the world of animation, and the rest is history. I tell the story very often about the coincidences that led up to my getting my first gig in animation. I'm not going to go on and on about it now unless somebody asks for it, then I'll tell you all about it. But my getting into the animation business was a series of unbelievable coincidences that would have made or broken my whole career, I think, if a couple of things hadn't happened. But the bottom line is being at the right place at the right time with the right whatever. And so if you're not employed and you're thinking about getting into the business of anything, you need to start now just prepping for it and getting ready. And so that when the time comes, you can say, I am the right person for the job. And that's called being at the right place at the right time, is you were preparing for it all along so that when the time came, you were there and ready. So anyway, I'm going to probably have to shut this scene down. You may notice I've shut this scene down periodically and then I open it up again. That's because whenever I use trace in place, there's a bug in my version of Toon Boom that makes it so that a lot of the tools don't work unless I open up the scene again. So you'll see me do that periodically. Just shut it down and open it up again. So ignore that person behind the curtain when I have to shut things down every now and then open up another one. But anyway, continuing on. So Ritz one. RIZW animation, you do 3D. Yeah, I did 3D for a long time, and I really liked it. I thought it was really fun. I did character animation and creature effects. So worked at DreamWorks for a while doing character in the early days of their 3D pipeline, and then moved into creature effects at another studio eventually. And then Grayscale. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Second best time is now. That's great. It's a great quote. I don't know who said it, but that's awesome. Best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time is now. Obviously. I know people of all ages and all walks of life who take classes, not only in 2D, but in all sorts of things. I used to teach Photoshop, or I taught it briefly actually, and you would see people of all ages going, nope, I just want to try it, see if I can do it, see if I like it. And then they ended up having a great time, and then we're able to do things for organizations and get little small gigs here and there. So here. That's a great quote. Well, it's an intro to 2D, very young, and sometimes feel a lot of place because everyone seems older and has, you could sound mature. I would say don't worry about sounding mature. It'll come soon enough. If you're young and you're worried about sounding mature, worry not. There will come a time. How about this? When I started out in the animation business, I was always the youngest person in any given studio, and I was always, quote unquote, the kid. And quickly went from being the kid to the wise old sage. That happened during my time at Disney. I was at Disney for 2 years, or 3 movies. And in the short period of time that I was there, I went from being the one who's always the young one to being the wise old veteran who had been there forever. So youth does not last very long. Enjoy it while it lasts. You may find later that, I'm really going to sound old, but you may find later that you wish that you would have enjoyed it, because it is very fleeting, being young. And also too, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being young, and nobody that I know of anyway discriminates against people in a class situation for being young. So I hope that you're not feeling that way, that you're not feeling discriminated or in any way disadvantaged because you're not as mature as some of the other people in your class. But yeah, it's not an infirmity to be young. The only thing that you really need when at any age is you need to be passionate about what you're doing, love what you're doing, and focus on loving the things that you do. And even if it's things that you're not enjoying, it's not your, what do they say? It's not your wheelhouse or whatever. My mom used to say all the time, if you can't get out of it, get into it. If you can't get out of it, get into it. And what that meant is you have the ability to be happy or unhappy. You just have to set your mind to it. For the most part, and obviously there's always going to be an exception to every rule. But as far as work and working life and maturity, at any age you have the ability to be happy. You just got to tap into it and just make that decision. And part of becoming more mature, it's just a thing that usually happens if you're paying attention, is you begin to understand that it's like that nobody is making you happy, nobody's making you unhappy. Those things that you want, that you think will be the catalyst for happiness, it's like, no, it was how you felt about them. And the sooner you tap into that, the more freed up you are to enjoy everything that you do, because you have the ability to choose to be happy or unhappy about anything. And it doesn't mean you don't want things. It doesn't mean that, again, pain and stuff, you're supposed to enjoy all that. But I'm just talking about like my friend who was a custodian said it was the best job he ever had. He was an animator, but his best job he ever had was this custodian, because you could just do whatever you wanted, mouth off all he wanted. Nobody would call him out on it. He said it was just great. He was an introvert, got to work alone, work at night, which he loved. And he just thought it was awesome. I said, so it's better than working in animation? He goes, yeah, hold that thought. Anyway, so Grayscale has a lot of interests. Worried you'll never be satisfied. Well, nobody can help you with that. So that's for that's for Grayscale J. Nobody will ever, this is what I was just saying actually, is nobody will ever make you happy. You have to kind of resolve at a certain point to be happy about your situation. But it comes with time. When I was young, I wasn't happy about anything. I was always striving and trying to get better at stuff. And I think that that's part of being younger, is not being satisfied and wanting to get more and get better. And then when you get older, then you can rest on your laurels a little bit and sit back and relax. But when you're young, do everything. Try everything. Try to get a job in everything. Be a jack of all trades and master none. It's all right. Nina Bird says, how much scare is it if you add 10 years to that 27? Well, my mom always said that old is 15 years older than whatever age you currently are, no matter what that age is. So, you know, especially nowadays when a lot of us are working from home, it's not about necessarily about, you know, how old you are. It's, well, what can you bring to the table? What are your experiences? I started my entire career over at 40, and 40 was a while ago. I started it over again at 40, and from scratch. I mean, I went from 0 to, I mean, not from scratch. I was still animating, but I went from doing CG character animation at a big studio I'd been at for many, many years to doing creature effects at a studio that I was brand new at, and that was filled with people half my age. And somehow it worked. Somehow I was able to make that happen. And then when that ended, sometime later, I'm not going to say how long, but I had to reinvent myself again and start all over again at another age that was even older than 40, much older than 40. And I did that, and it was fun, and I survived it. And if I can, you guys can too. So whenever anybody says they're worried about their age, I mean, it's a factor. You get to a certain point, especially if you're settled and you have family and kids and roots in a house, land. You don't want to move around too much. You don't want to work too many long hours. You know, it affects things. You need to make a certain amount of cash to stay solvent. Yeah, for sure, it's going to affect things. But you know, but what else are you going to do? Try it. See what happens. Unless you've, you know, then you'll know. The worst that can happen is that it doesn't work the way that you hoped it would. And then, you know, I know a friend who tried Broadway. He's a singer, an excellent singer, and he decided to try out New York. And he went there. He came, he saw, he didn't, I don't know that he conquered, but I asked him later, I said, well, what do you think? Was this venture successful, or do you think that maybe it was all kind of a waste of time and money and energy? He goes, are you kidding? It was fantastic. And now I know. It's like, now I don't ever have to ask that question of what if I had gone to New York and tried to get into Broadway. And then when he came back, he was a much happier person because now he was, now he knew. So yeah, don't let it stop you, and don't be afraid. And you know, people will always say age is just a number. Well, I got away with seeming a lot younger than I actually am for many, many years, and I still kind of do it. And you know, people didn't ask me about my age. They just, you know, well, can you do the job? And as long as I could do the job and do it well, then they didn't have a problem with that. So, you know, cool. Well, you guys are saying some really nice positive things. I appreciate it. That's great. Yeah, definitely scary or honesty is still working to save. To RIZW animation. I'll let other people say if they want to see your videos or not. You can link to them if they're, just as long as they're not anything naughty. We have people who look at these and they will zap you and forbid you from ever coming here again if you try to post something that's inappropriate, that has bad language or copyrighted stuff, or is in any way deemed offensive. So just be careful. But yeah, if somebody wants to see your stuff, yeah. And honestly, just working to save money and decide what to do. Hopefully make a move before 30. Yeah, grayscale J, 30 is young. So just, you know. And you guys are just talking. I'll leave you alone, leave you to it. You just like to make connections. Experience and criticism from all is important. What a wonderful attitude, Abby. That's great. So just keep that attitude up. And I will say this about youth. There are times when, as a younger person, I was just in such a hurry I had so many things that I wanted to do, and I felt there was so little time, and so I'll just offer up this, that there might be more time than you think. Um, so, patience, be patient. You may be surprised how much more time than you think there is than what you think you have. So just something to think about. But yeah, I mean, I know that feeling. I just was like, can we just get on with it? Can I be the person that I'm going to be someday? And can we just skip this part? And the unfortunate truth is that no, you can't skip any parts. You have to go through in a fairly straight line, or even a crooked line, but you have to go through all the different parts. And that's the good parts and the bad ones. And I'm living proof. I've lived through some pretty bad ones. I've had some pretty bumpy rides at times, and not even as bad as a lot of people I know who had them. I've actually had a really glorious career. I've got a really fortunate. People tell me it's like, well, wow, some say you're really lucky, and then other people say, no, you really did the right thing. You just always tried to be a cool person and get along with everyone and keep being enthusiastic about work and the stuff that you love to do. So they say own it when you've been successful at things, and I consider myself fairly successful with the things that I've had happen. So just own it and own up to it. Yeah, making connections is really important, and connections come out of friendships. They come out of I like this, you like this. Let's keep talking about it, and the more and more we talk about it, the more likely somebody is to go at some point, oh, they're hiring at this studio, or I know this friend of a friend who really needs whatever that you can do, and why don't I give them your number, and then you guys can talk about it and decide if it's mutually advantageous for you to work together. And that's what connections are all about. It's really pretty simple when you get right down to it, but it requires that you put yourself out there, and that's something that a lot of us introverted artist types are very anxious about, is having to put yourself out there and make those connections organically. I know I keep using that word, but making sure that you're noticeable. It can be really hard, but I'll just say it because there's no other way to downplay it, which is there is no way to get discovered if you don't put yourself out there. If people don't know who you are, then they won't know how good you are. And the unfortunate thing is that the world has gotten very busy, it's gotten very crowded, and it's gotten progressively harder and harder to make a name for yourself doing anything. I remember I heard Roger Daltrey of The Who, that was who it was, and he said, if The Who were supposed to be considered by classic rockers one of the greatest rock bands that ever existed, if they were to come out today, they probably wouldn't even get noticed, because there's so many bands out there and so many people vying for your attention, and the world of music has gotten so spread out. So it's not quite as bad as that, I think, with the world with the world of animation anyway. Animation is still a pretty small world, but the world of the art can be it can be a pretty difficult thing to break into, because there is a lot of competition. I once had a writer put it to me this way. He's like, writing is the best job in the entire world. Everybody wants to do it. Most people aren't even qualified to do it. And so it's a really hard thing to get to do. And it's the same with making movies. In some ways, it's an awesome thing to do with your time on the planet. And because of that, a lot of people want to do it. And so the competition can be really fierce. But one of the keys is to be really cool and really passionate about what you like to do. And then another key is just don't take no for an answer. That's the biggest Hollywood secret of all, is when people tell you can't be done, or you can't do it, or whatever, just do it anyway. And that's kind of half my career. So, so the name of the stream on Twitch. Sure, maybe you guys are referring to something else. And cool. You guys have made some friends. That's awesome. Keep going. Just do it, elbow cough. That's awesome. I need to so you can understand everyone. Cool. Glad you guys are, Lightwave 3D. I hope you like Lightwave. Those are good questions. And NASA, you guys are having some fun. Cool. Keep it up. I love it when you guys chat with each other. That's great. I'll stay out of it. Second piece of cake at the birthday party. That's great. Well, good. So then you should have no problem making connections. Just this is to Abby F. My just caveat is always be very sincere in the connections you make. People often say to me, how do you network? How do you schmooze? And I mean, that's two different things. Schmoozing is you're phony and you just try to get in any old way you can by appealing to somebody's vanity or their ego. And the people I know who are really worth their salt, they can't be schmoozed. They see people coming a mile away, and they've had it happen so many times. I have had people trying to schmooze me to try and, I don't know what they think I've got that they think I'll give to them. I mean, I give people the knowledge that I have. That's about the best thing I have to offer. I suppose contacts and connections to people that I know who are, I don't know, famous or working in the field that they want to work in. And it's like, well, that's never going to happen. I mean, never say never, but it doesn't happen that often. It's just if you want to maintain a friendship, you don't exploit that friendship by trying to get your friends who are famous to do charities and stuff. It just doesn't pan out very well for anybody. So it's a good idea not to do it. But networking, on the other hand, is different. It's like becoming friends with people who have similar interests. And it's kind of how I've gotten every job I've gotten, really, is through friends of friends. And they say, my friends will say, oh, well, you're talented and you're nice and we like you. So why don't you come over and apply for a job here? Or that job would be perfect for you. Why don't you try that? And it just takes time to kind of build up a network like that. But once you do, it can work wonders once you've established yourself as somebody who's cool and available and looking for opportunities. I think most people I know, anyway, maybe I'm just lucky, but most people I know are really sincere and they want to be of help. And who wouldn't want to be part of the club who can say, oh, I know that person when, and I helped them get their start in whatever chosen career that they had. And so I really do feel like people are willing to help if you're sincere and you're trying and if you've got a modicum of talent. And then the rest is up to you. It's just being eager, being cool, and just keep trying and trying until you get whatever it is you want. And then as soon as you get that, then move on to the next thing. So anyway, do you think there'll be a space for 2D in AR and VR? I don't know. I mean, for VR, the thing is my fear is that people don't want to wear stuff. They figured it out with the 3D television phase that happened. I don't know now how long that's been. It kind of wrapped up a while back. And the reason that it probably wrapped up is because people didn't seem to enjoy wearing the glasses. And somebody explained that to me, a really cool media person that I'm friends with who actually has helped me get several jobs or get me several gigs, speaking gigs and stuff. But he had said, he goes, we knew that 3D TV wasn't working because people were not buying extra sets of 3D glasses. And so that was the death knell for 3D televisions, is that it wasn't something that was high on people's priority lists. So I just don't know. I mean, if VR continues in the way it's going and people embrace it and it keeps evolving and changing, then sure. But I think of it as it's not so much about the medium at that point as it is, well, animation in general. So so anyway, yeah, so the 2D animation will be around. Is it going to be AR, VR? You know, what are they going to do with it? Well, I mean, they've always been using it for presentations and commercials and I don't know, gifts and things like that. So there will always be a platform for it. And it's just, what's the flavor of the month? And so if you're interested in technology and you follow it, good for you. That's great. But the more important thing is, but could you do the animation when the time came, when the platform arrived? It's like, well, we need someone. I remember when VR was getting started, and they said, well, does anybody know how to do it? Does anybody know how to animate for VR in a VR environment? And those who did found themselves employed. However, some people found themselves also part of a quick phase. And so, like I said, I don't know a lot of people who like to spend a lot of time with VR and that are buying different VR projects. And so I don't, it's just my personal opinion on the subject. But knowing how to do the animation is the important part. Anyway, well, hello, Classics AM. It's really scanning animation in a computer. Nice. Trying to be sincere. Don't want to be a clown. Well, Abby, people love to laugh, and see if you can make people laugh, you're halfway there. It's just something to think about. And yeah, so I mean, I think the word is still out. You guys talking about VR and AR, it's still the verdict is still out on whether or not it's going to be a success. My teacher, who taught in Oxford, England, of all places, the place that I went to study for fun. I just like to name drop that. It sounds so impressive. I studied Arthurian legends at Worcester College, Oxford, in England. Anyway, she said that a classic is just something that's been kicked around for several years and is still, still consumed by people. Books, movies, music. The Beatles have been going around forever and ever, and people still listen to them. And so they're classic. And it doesn't, in her opinion, and again, she was talking about classic literature, so I trusted her opinion, but she says it's not necessarily always the quality. It's just that's a thing that people want to keep. And so we'll see. It's a little early to tell with VR and company. I love to point this out. I think that Jeffrey Katzenberg is phenomenally talented, and he was an excellent executive, kept us all employed for a long time when other executives would have given up the ship at DreamWorks. He just kept it going. But he, at one point, claimed that 3D television was or 3D in general, 3D films and television was the wave of the future. Everybody be doing it, and they were committed to doing everything in 3D from now on forever. And we saw how that worked out. And a lot of us at the time said, again, didn't we kind of have 3D like in the 50s? And then we had it again in the early 80s. And we've kind of done it. And so that's going to revolutionize the world? Probably not. And it kind of didn't. But that was, at the time it was considered to be all the rage, and everybody was making 3D animated films. And you don't know. You don't know until it's over who won. I always point out the story of VHS versus beta tapes. Some of you probably don't even know what I'm talking about, but there were VHS tapes and there were beta tapes, and VHS won the battle. And then there was also laser discs, and obviously that didn't go anywhere. But before DVDs, I'm not even talking about DVDs. Before DVDs, there were laser discs, and I had one because it was the only way to watch Star Wars movies in letterbox form. But all those are kind of either gone or being phased out. So you don't really know, and that's when within my lifetime I've seen the phasing out. Abby, thanks for following. Appreciate it. So we don't know about VR. We don't know if it's going to make it or not, and what it's going to be as it morphs into other things. Well, guess we'll find out. Here we go. And So what do we got? Took you a while, classics, to make hand-drawn animation. Oh, it takes a long time to do hand-drawn animation. You can see, I mean, I've been working on this, not actively, but I mean, you can see how much I've done in the time we've been here today. Haven't progressed through a lot of this, but I'm also talking and thinking and controlling things as we do that. But I've been on the scene for a while, and it does take a long time. We figured it. We were supposed to do about a drawing an hour, at least in the cleanup department at Disney, and you know, that's one drawing is, if everything's on twos, then that's 1/12 of a second. So there's 12 drawings per second of animation. So if I could do, I'll let you do the math, I'm terrible at math, but you figure I did 8 drawings a day, and in order to do a second of 1 second of animation, I had to do 12. So you go from the end of the movies were, you know, at the minimum they were just under 90 minutes. 80 minutes was like average for an animated 2D film. So yeah, it's a lot of work. And that's, you know, like this stuff I'm doing here, and this is just as much as I can do without spending hours and hours and hours and making something that looks absolutely sterling and beautiful. I really just do these streams for fun and as an opportunity to discuss stuff with animation people, and then, you know, people who are excited about animation, and then work on projects. But these are not by any stretch classic pieces of animation that I'm working on here. This is just, it's all just a lot of fun stuff. But even this is taking a long time. Yeah, so I'm going to save this and then reopen it, because it's doing the thing it does whenever you take things off of pegs. And while I'm doing that, look at what you guys are talking about. Any tips for ease in and ease out in hand-drawn animation? Yeah, lots of drawings. Not always. You know, let me just shut this down. I'll open it up again, and I'll show you the secret to easing in and easing out. Make another Twitch account. Oh, thanks, Abby. That's great. In the range of 12 drawings a day. Well, that's great. Good for you. Keep it up. 12 drawings a day is wonderful. And again, I don't know if I've said this today or not, but I always point out the unfortunate thing with doing your own projects is that you have to be your own producer and writer and director and everything. And you wouldn't have to do that in the real world. In the real world, you would actually probably only be responsible for the animation. And so part of the thing about doing your own projects is you have to wear many hats, and you have to be good at all sorts of things. And that's, it can be really challenging. So I always tell my students, don't worry so much about doing the cleanup pass. Spend most of your time on the actual animation. That's, if you're trying to get a job, that is what animators will be looking at, is whether or not you can actually animate. And the animation is the rough stuff. People have this misconception, some people do, some don't, have this misconception that people are drawing really tight on their first pass of rough animation, and it's just not the case. The truth is that you can go through many iterations of rough animation before you finally get to the really pristine looking cleanup pass. And another misnomer is that everybody should be able to do the cleanup pass equally. And the truth, good, bad, or indifferent, is that some people are more inclined to do the cleanup than others. Most animators I knew in the Disney world were not good at cleanup. And not only that, but they abhorred it, they hated it, and they didn't like what it did to their animation. They didn't like how it made everything so rigid. It took a lot of the life out of their animation, they felt. And then by contrast, most of the cleanup people I knew, and then when I was doing cleanup, which is the entry-level job that I started in, actually I got really good at it. I was kind of a master at cleanup there for a while, if that's a thing. You know, those of us, and we all know who each other are, who were all devout cleanup people, got really good at it. I certainly wasn't the best, but I think I was told that some people said I was one of the best in the biz. It was a small world then, but everybody was great, you know, that I worked with. But anyway, there were lots of people who were very good at cleanup who were not good at doing the rough stuff, and so you know, they're two different disciplines. It's not something that you can be expected to excel at everything. But slow in, slow out. There are two ways you can do this. So this is for classics. Slow in and slow out. If you look at it this way, if I've got one drawing here and I've got, let's do an even number. I've got 10 here. What kind of a brush is that? Then if I want something to start slow and then speed up, then I just have to collapse my drawings like so. So I've got 8, and I'll just do it on evens, 6, 4, 2, and then each one of these is halfway in between. So halfway between 1 and 10, I would draw 8, and then I would do halfway between 1 and 8, do 6, halfway between 1 and 6, I do 4. And by doing that, each of my drawings are getting closer and closer and closer as they get to drawing number 1. That means from drawing 1 to 10, it'll start slow and it'll speed up. The reverse of that is, obviously, I could start with drawing number 2 as my halfway point. So I'd start with drawing number 2 and then go to 4, 6, and 8, and make each one of those half and half, etc., etc. And by doing that, my drawings are moving at a certain speed, and then as they get closer and closer to 10, they're getting slower and slower, and it's stopping. So that's one thing that you can do. Another thing that you can do, so that's just basic charting. So easing in, easing out is a matter of making sure there are more drawings either at the beginning or at the end that are in between other drawings. But another thing that you can do is you can simply space out your drawings. They do exist. And this happens a lot in like Toon, but when it happened in the real world, it happened with 2D animation on paper too, where you've got a timeline, kind of like the one I have below, and here are your drawings, and let's say they're on 2s, 2, 4, 6, 8. I've got the smoothing turned up way high so they don't draw very well. I can take drawing 6 and 8, and I can shift them forward in the timeline so that now they're not 6 and 8 anymore. Now they're 10 and 12 or whatever, and that 4 actually lasts a little bit longer than it used to. So now this is 10, and then 10 becomes 12, you know. And so I'm exposing drawings for longer, and that might result in a choppier look. But if you're doing something in an anime style, maybe you don't care about the choppy look of it so much. But it's still a matter of more drawings equals slower, less drawings equals faster, less exposure. Well, less exposure equals faster too. So it's the drawings and the exposure time, the amount of time they're on the screen. Things are on 2s, 2 frames, or 4s, 4 frames, or 1s, 1 frame. If things are on 3s, and there's a bunch of drawings, it's going to go at a certain speed. If they're on being exposed 1 frame at a time, and there's 2 drawings, it's going to go really fast. So that is how you can kind of think about slow in and slow out, ease in, ease out, same thing for hand-drawn animation, since you're curious. The animation clean on the first pass, not a good idea, right, Jordan? Yeah, you figured that one out, right? Yeah, you don't need, nor do you want to do animation clean on the first pass. You want to explore motion. You want to get in there and play around with timing and spacing. How do you feel about animators on YouTube? Any appreciating styles? Had certain styles impress? Well, it's such a big topic for what impresses me. What impresses me is dynamic action, and something I'm trying to work up for this class is something that's like a real stylized animated action scene like you might find in a game or anime. We're actually bringing someone on soon, not for a little while, another month or 2, who specializes in the anime style, and we'll have a lot of high hopes on her bringing in a different element, because again, animation's also, there's a whole spectrum, CG spectrum. There's a whole range of things that encompass animation and animation styles, but I like stuff that's really dynamic and really exaggerated and very sharp. Probably because it's not my thing. I don't do that naturally. I was kind of more of the classical Disney style, which relies on a lot of pantomime and a lot of exaggerated acting. And so I really like the dynamic stuff. But I mean, I liked it with Don Bluth and the games. It was just the dragons there in space. These were so fast and dynamic and a lot of exaggeration, really over the top. And I've always liked that. So when I see animators doing that, young animators, it's very exciting. When I see animators who are young, who just have an incredible sense of style and really understand anatomy, like you see on the art station. And a lot of my students have had it where I just look and I'm looking at you, Jordan. I mean, they show a unique sense of style that is exciting and different and fun. So I appreciate stuff. I appreciate stuff that's different, whatever that means. And classics, you're trying to save paper. Yeah, don't do traditional animation. That's a good one. And paper, at least the good stuff that I used to work with when I did the old style 2D animation. It was really expensive. It got really pricey to do 2D animation the old analog way. Fortunately, when I made my short film, I got a lot of stuff donated, and that's one of these things where I'm just very, very grateful to the universe for the fact that I was able to work at a studio and they had a whole bunch of stock that they couldn't use, and so they were willing to donate it to me for my short film. I'm not sure I lived up to their expectations for my short film, but hey, I did the best I could with what I had, and I'm not ashamed of my short films. I think they're entertaining their own way. I realized I wasn't maybe as interested in the animation and coming up with beautiful animation as I was telling stories using animation as a medium. So it was good for that. But it is kind of funny that I spent a lot of time working on my first animated film, and I don't know that it actually is something that I would classify as being this brilliant piece of animation. So, well, thank you. Something, CL Raygasm. Thanks for that. Appreciate it. Yes. Something about hand animation that feels good. Well, again, the classics, it's that organic feel to it, that you really feel the artist and you really feel that they struggled to make this animation come to pass by getting in there and drawing things. And that's one of the things I always loved about it, and that's what I loved about animation cells, which was why I started making my own, is because you just look at an animation cell from an old Disney film or from any films, a lot of things that I liked that were non-Disney, and you see that piece of plastic that's painted on one side and drawn on the other, and you're like, that's the movie. You're looking at the actual movie right there. That's kind of wild. And we fell out of that as a result of the digital era. They don't make, well, at least in the US, they don't make films that way anymore. They still do, as far as I understand, they still do in some anime. But and they're still drawing on paper with anime most of the time, again, as far as I understand it. But yeah, that's the thing that I miss the most about the analog days. And I remember distinctly when they made stereo cells, animation cells for Pocahontas, and they offered them to us because we'd worked on the film at Disney. And I'm like, yeah, but they didn't have cells in that film. It was all scanned and then digitally painted. And plus we drew the film and they wanted us to buy our own artwork. I'm like, I can make my own cells. Not to knock anything. Yeah, that sounds kind of snarky, but why would I pay a lot of money for art that I had drawn myself for the movie? and could easily make my own cells out of it and paint them. I mean, mine didn't look as good as the real thing, the ones that they've sold for exorbitant prices. But I was just like, yeah, I think I'll pass. Plus, I don't know that that's a very stable art. The original animation cells from the old Disney films, they don't hold up too well. They get wrinkly and stuff. Anyway, it's off the subject. But I mean, it's organic art. I just love cell animation. Hand drawn is really beautiful. It's just wonderful texture. You really feel the team effort to make it. Funny you should mention that, though. I'll just say this for contrast. If you ever look up, anyone who's interested, if you look up Raggedy Ann and Andy, the musical adventure, I think it's called, and then type in the Greedy, or you can just write Raggedy Ann and Andy Greedy, and you'll see a sequence on YouTube that is, it's an interesting thing to study. I bring it up in my classes all the time. I like it. I think it's interesting, but try watching the entire thing. Try looking at the entire sequence of the Greedy in Raggedy Ann and Andy, the motion picture, and tell me what you think sometime. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. I think it's alarming. It's exhausting. It's this ever undulating thing that goes on for like 10 minutes while the song is going on in the film. And it's very experimental. And there's a reason why they don't do that very often. And the film as a whole, the Raggedy Ann film from the 70s, it's exhausting to watch because you really feel the work that went into it. And you can feel every single line. The line mileage of the characters is incredible. I don't think I'm supposed to show it. I don't know what the copyright rules are, but you can look it up, Raggedy Ann and Andy Musical Adventure, and just find a sequence from that film. And you'll see all this line mileage and all this busy work, and it can be exhausting to see how much work went into something. What they try to do with most mainstream projects that are 2D animated is make it look like one person did it all. And in the old days, in fact, they really did say Walt Disney, it's a Walt Disney film. And I believed when I was a little kid that meant that he did the whole thing. And I grew up believing that one person could make your own feature and make it look like a Disney film. And anyone who's tried to do animation, anyone who's taken art classes knows that is probably not likely. It's really hard to do a quality feature quality project, even if it's really short. And I know people who have been working on, individuals who've been working on their dream projects now for quite a while. Some of them pretty famous Disney people. And their projects are not done, and they've been going on for a really long time. And that's just because it takes a long time to do this stuff. It is a labor of love for sure. And so the sooner you kind of wrap your mind around that, probably the happier you'll be if it's something you're interested in doing. Like I said, I've said this many times. Once you're being paid to do it for a living, it's funny how it doesn't seem to take that long. In fact, you hope it will go on longer because it's your job. You don't want to lose your job. And so you don't want it to end too quickly, and you want to spend the extra time. And usually the production is the one that's saying, oh, got to speed up, got to go faster, got to do more. And you want to go slower. So let's see. Love the movie watched as a kid. It's one of your faves. Is it Raggedy Ann, I think you're talking about? Anyway. It's exhausting when you're a kid. You said out loud, wow, that must have been hard on my wrists. That's funny. Thank you for sharing that, Abby. Yeah. So, check that out. I use it as an example, and Jordan, I think we even talked about it in the class, is an example of a sequence that specifically ignores the 12 principles and says, well, what if we do everything that you're not supposed to do? And so the focus of the scene is not clear, and the characters themselves are not clear, and it never stops. The pace just keeps going and going and going, and it doesn't vary. It doesn't get faster or slower. And all of these things can be found in the 12 principles of animation. There's no silhouette value. There's no good design. Well, depends on how you feel about it. Like I said, I like it. I like the film. I think it's really wild. That's a very 70s thing to say, isn't it? It's wild, man. I think it's really different. and I love things that are unusual and experimental. I love Fantasia. It's one of my favorite films because it's different. It's not easy and not really all that mainstream. That's the reason I like it. But if you want to, you know, I remember sitting with a bunch of classic animators, some of the masters that I learned from, and not the masters, but I mean people who were, I mean, maybe they're masters now. I don't know. It's a word that gets bandied about too much, I think. But I watched people who are really classic animators, trained by the best in the biz, and they were talking about Fantasia, and they said, "Oh yeah, the Rite of Spring sequence, which is about the beginning of the of life on Earth, and feels like that's about how long it takes for the sequence to go on." I'm like, well, that's not really fair. I think that sequence is incredible. Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring, set to dinosaurs in Fantasia, and so you know, people who are supposed to be animation fans are like, oh yeah, there's only 3 sequences in Fantasia that are any good. Well, I love the whole thing, and I watch it regularly, and I don't think it's boring at all. But I get why people would find it boring. But anyway, that's the stuff I like, stuff that's not necessarily mainstream. And so I love the Raggedy Ann thing. I watch it and study it, and I'm just perplexed by it. I did not see it as a kid, but I've seen it as an adult, and I think it's absolutely fascinating. And I think Richard Williams is a fascinating person to study, you know, and he's done a lot of great tutorial work, a lot of teaching work. You can look at, you know, one of his books is one of the things that we recommend in our classes, and but he also had very specific ideas about how animation should look, and I don't always agree with his ways and wiles, or what he thinks is the right way to do things. And I think it's dangerous, like we're talking about politics here or something. But I think it's something to think about. You know, is there only one way to do things? And you should always only do it this way, or are there many, many ways to do things, ways we haven't even discovered yet, and just keep being excited about things and keep trying to find new ways to do things, to express yourself in new ways with your art. So anyway, that's my philosophy, and I think that the world supports it, because the world loves change. So anyway, I think the old Superman was fantastic. Yeah, it's really cool, huh? I know somebody I worked with at Disney. Boy, I cannot remember his name, which is good, because then I can't do any name dropping. But he does like fan art of Superman in. You can find it on YouTube. Is his name Jay? Sorry. Anyway, yeah, former Disney animator, and he does his own Superman animation, and does like a very stylized fan fiction-ish kind of Superman cartoon, but done with that as an influence, the old stuff. And I think it's just awesome. And I don't know how he has the time or energy or wherewithal to do this stuff, but I'm glad he does. And he'll just come out with a new adventure every now and then. It seems like no time at all to me, because I'm not doing it myself, but it's years. And then he'll have a new one, and then he'll be quiet again for a while, and then he'll come up with another one. So, but his stuff was based on that old classic Superman stuff. It's really cool and weird and different and great. And so, Abiyu, okay, just new in Toon Boom, I want to ask, what is that red and blue dots mean? Red and blue dots. Not sure what you're referring. Oh, the red and blue dot. I'm sorry. Yes. So the red and blue dots you're talking about down in the here. I'll draw a big arrow. If you're talking about these red and blue dots down here in the timeline, the red ones are keys, and the blue ones are breakdowns. And if you look up at the top of my screen, I'll make this a little more visible if I can. I'm able to, in Toon Boom, I can designate something as a key. So for example, I'm going to do a new drawing right here. I'll create a new drawing by going right mouse, drawings, create empty drawing. And then I will click on this B, mark selected drawing as a breakdown. Now I know which drawings were my key extremes and which ones were a little bit more in between some of those key extremes. And one thing I can do with Toon Boom that's cool, I'll show you how it works. So I want Toon Boom to only look at the keys for the scene I'm currently working on. So now it's going to go through and just show me the keys. I'm just clicking through, actually I'm only clicking through a specific section of my timeline. It goofs things up every now and then. But anyway, but these are the keys in my scene. So there, it's not fluid, it's not animation, it's just, well, it's kind of animation, but it's a lot of stuff on 4s, 6s, 12s, whatever. These are the key poses that describe the entire story of this scene from beginning to end. Oh, that's why I've got the X sheet selected here. Get rid of that, and then I'll just go. Actually, I'm in the middle of something, so I'll just keep clicking on them. I don't want to ruin that. But anyway, those are the keys, the red ones. And then the blue ones fill in the blanks even further. So now you can see that the animation is a little bit more fluid. And that's because I'm showing breakdowns, which are breaking down the action even more so than the keys did. The keys described the entire story of the scene. The breakdowns are filling in some of the blanks in between those key extreme poses. Secondary action, secondary animation, overlap and follow through. Those are things you'll find in the breakdowns. And then after that, we fill it in with in-betweens. And you can mark those too, but I don't. I just mark the keys in the breakdowns. And so put it all together. I haven't shown it in a while, so this is what it currently looks like. I've done all the keys and most of the breakdowns. You can see it's still kind of choppy. There's still some things missing. If I play the rough pass by itself, you can see it's a little more fluid. I didn't fill in all the drawings because I figured I'd do that in the cleanup stage. And the body is on a separate level from the tentacles. So it has its own timing. And so I broke it up into a separate layer. But anyway, hopefully that answers the question of what the red and blue dots mean. They are keys are the red ones and breakdowns are the blue ones. We are rapidly approaching the end of another evening of twitching here, or streaming here, technically, because we're not just doing Twitch. So here's what I got so far with the cleanup. Haven't progressed a lot again, so somebody pointed out, boy, animation takes a long time, doesn't it? I'll probably keep whittling at this, away at this. I'm really close, actually. I've got like four drawings or so, so I might do some work on this over the week and then turn it. If you show up next week, I will probably have this either finished or very close to being finished, at least the body. And then just it's a matter of finishing off the tentacles and then painting the thing. And then the whole thing will be put together. Just for the record, I'll put it together now with the hero character that I already finished before. And then the temporary background. This is not mine. I did not create it. I grabbed it. I just stole it. And I will create a real background when I'm done. This is like my layout, basically a temporary layout for my background. But it'll probably look very much like this. Anyway, this is how it's looking. So far, I'll turn off the cleanup for the creature so you can just see it. So that's kind of what my scene is looking. Yeah, Jordan, I mean, that was the idea, was I wanted to do something that's gross and ugly and disgusting, but kind of cute and sort of childlike too. And then that comes from Don Bluth and Space Ace and Dragon's Lair, where they had these kind of Disney-looking characters and they were getting killed violently on screen in graphic ways, but it was all in fun. Anyway, well, thank you, Abby. I'm glad you're enjoying watching this. I appreciate the company. It's fun to have you guys come and visit, and I love that you guys are talking to each other. That's great. Keep it up. Keep sharing things. It's half the fun, I think, of these streams is that you guys get to meet each other and talk and make connections, network. Can you animate opacity in Toon Boom? Oh, that's a really good question. That's a really good question. I think without, I mean, I am certainly not a Toon Boom expert. We have them at CG Spectrum. We have certified trainers, certified animation Toon Boom users, and animation Toon Boom teachers, people who teach Toon Boom, that's their specialty. But I am not one of those people. I teach animation and I know Toon Boom, but I don't teach it like the ins and outs of it specifically. And so I think what you'd end up having to. That's a really good question. You know what? I'm going to make a note of that one because I'm curious too. If you could have the opacity animate on and off, I know there's a way to do it, but I'm not sure. And if I thought of a way, it'd be like, I just thought of this on the spot. There's probably an easier way to do it than what I would think to do it. So yeah, what I'm doing is I'm just turning the opacity up and down manually to make things easier to draw. But I know there's a way to animate opacity on and off. It's probably in the realm of effects. I don't really talk too much about the node system in Toon Boom. That's because, again, I'm not an expert on Toon Boom per se. Once you get into nodes, then you're really talking some serious fun Toon Boom technical stuff. And I concentrate mostly on the just animation using Toon Boom as a tool to get where I want to go with basic animation stuff that I think is helpful to beginners and beginner to intermediate. And then if you want to know more about expert stuff, we have those people with Toon Boom. We have those people on staff to help you out with that if that's something you like. So good night, Cherry. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you, Nina Bird. Thank you for visiting with us today. And oh, great, Abby, great. Always love to inspire people. And I hope to hear great things from everyone out there who's been watching this stuff. And yes, classics, share your stuff, share your work. Don't be afraid. You'll get feedback. Take it for what it is. It doesn't mean you're good, bad, or indifferent. It just means you have feedback, and feedback can be really cool. All right, I'm going to go back to Santa, and Santa will dance us off the screen tonight. Thanks again for stopping by and visiting and commenting. Please feel free to stop by anytime. I'm here every week at this time for 2 hours. We have other people do streams at CG Spectrum if you're interested in other elements of CG art, motion graphics, and the like. So feel free to stop by the other streams. And then we have all sorts of classes that are available if you go to cgspectrum.com. Check it out, see if there's anything you might be interested in, including some free trials now and then too. So yeah, good night. And yeah, Santa says goodbye. Again, my name is Scott Claus, aka S Claus. So I have a personal tie to this guy over here. So yeah, we say good night. Have a great rest of your day or evening, wherever you are. And maybe I'll see you next time. Have a great week. All right. Take care and see you.